The NBA season is right around the corner, so let's take a look at 3 rookies who could be poised to have big years for their teams. This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break them down. Let's start out with Cam Thomas, and right off the bat, the thing that has stood out in the NBA is what brought him to the dance in the first place. Thomas is a bucket getter who makes tough shots look easy. He is really adept at creating separation off the dribble, able to make tons of space between himself and his defender out of stepbacks, for example. Thomas was a lights-out scorer in college at LSU, averaging 23 points per game. It is no surprise that his scoring firepower has picked up in the NBA. In particular, I'm curious to see what Thomas's role in Brooklyn will be. Right after the draft, I mentioned that the Nets had some great picks, but that I did not see a natural spot for Thomas in their rotation. With Kyrie Irving out for the foreseeable future, that might have changed. Thomas did not average a whole lot of minutes in preseason, but he is capable of giving the Nets the scoring punch that they will lack with Kyrie out. Another thing that I really appreciate about Thomas's scoring is his range. Thomas can easily stretch out to the NBA three-point line, and probably even beyond that. He is also a high-volume perimeter shooter, taking over 7 threes a game at LSU. He was not putting up as many treys in preseason, but he did not have the minutes to. If we look at his per 40 numbers, Thomas's attempts still look pretty similar. And as we know, three-point shooting is at an absolute premium right now in the NBA. But as has been the case for Thomas, he needs to keep working on his shot selection. Thomas is such a confident scorer that he is fearless, pulling up from anywhere with high difficulty jumpers. However, that does not mean that those are always the best shots to take. I have no worries about Thomas's ability to put the ball in the basket, but since he is a rookie, I'm not sure how long his leash will be. For example, he cannot take this pull-up 3 with 20 seconds on the shot clock with his team 1 point down. Going away from his jump shot, Thomas has the means to be a solid finisher at the basket. In preseason, he showed off a nice little floater that he's been working on. On top of that, Thomas is a decent athlete, with a quick first step that should allow him to blow by mismatches when they come out to guard him. However, Thomas still needs to add strength to his frame and keep working on his handle. We saw him struggle at the rim sometimes during preseason. Thomas was able to get into the paint, but he was not always comfortable finishing in traffic or through length. Thomas got knocked off balance too easily, which goes back to the strength, and he also was not overly creative with the ball. Going forward, Thomas will also need to keep working on keeping his defenders off balance, and he will need to add to his frame so that he does not have to take so many tough runners or floaters. Finally, I'm interested in seeing how Thomas develops as a facilitator. This has been an improvement area for him going back to his college days at LSU. Thomas is primarily a scorer, but he has to find ways to leverage that firepower into making life easier for his teammates. In preseason, Thomas showed the ability to make some pretty basic reads, but nothing overly complicated in terms of processing and manipulating defenses. There was a great piece on The Ringer by Kevin O'Connor recently, which touched on how Thomas could follow the James Harden blueprint in terms of great scorers who can then also facilitate. Whether this happens or not will be fascinating to follow. Because for now, Thomas is not a playmaker for others at all, really. At the time of this video, he was turning the ball over more than 2.5 times per game, which is rough for someone playing just about 15 minutes a night. Thomas has to get better at manipulating defenses, like I said, and making the right reads. Too often, he will try to throw a pass in a crowded area and it will get picked off. On top of that, let's quickly revisit his handle. It can be too loose and casual. Thomas will have to tighten that up to avoid turnovers and also round out his game. Someone who enjoyed an excellent preseason was DaVon Mitchell. Mitchell was drafted number 9 by the Sacramento Kings and is yet to lose a game in a Kings uniform. The former Baylor guard is a born winner, and although I think he went too high, there's no doubt he can be a culture changer in Sacramento. The first thing to mention is Mitchell's pull-up game. I had my questions about it going into the draft, but Mitchell has looked great from deep so far. He is pulling up off the dribble or out of stepbacks with ease. More impressively, Mitchell is making his threes at a 53% clip while shooting 5 per game. Of course, this is a tiny sample size, but Mitchell's performances have been super encouraging until now. As arguably the hardest worker in his draft class, I'm sure Mitchell will grind until he finds success. One thing I appreciate is that Mitchell has also looked good shooting the tray in off-ball situations. One of the reasons I was apprehensive about Mitchell's fit in Sacramento is because they already had Tyrese Haliburton and De'Aaron Fox. So far, this has not been a huge problem, especially if Mitchell can keep knocking down spot-up or catch-and-shoot threes. I expect the NBA to slowly gravitate towards 3-guard lineups as a real option, so the Kings might very well be ahead of the curve. In terms of finishing at the basket, I think the important thing to note is Mitchell's strength. Mitchell stands at just over 6 feet, but he is strong like a bowling ball. That allows him to hang in the air, displace defenders, or finish through contact. Mitchell made 65% of his shots at the rim at Baylor, while not being assisted on most of them. So far, he looks real good in the NBA too. What I will say though is that despite Mitchell's strength, he is always going to be working from underneath due to his size. So for example, he faced some difficulties finishing consistently when the Kings faced the Clippers. Mitchell was met by Ivica Zubac, a legit 7-footer in the paint, and he found that a little tough. Of course, these were his first NBA minutes against NBA bigs, so let's see what the adjustment curve ends up looking like. I'll get into this a bit more later, but I was always curious going into the draft about how Mitchell's passing would look like outside of Baylor. The reason for that is that he shared the ball a lot with Jared Butler, and I wasn't sure if he would end up in a different context in the NBA. But despite Fox and Haliburton, Mitchell still got plenty of on-ball reps in preseason. He looked comfortable handling the ball and making mature decisions. Unlike Thomas earlier, Mitchell leveraged his scoring potential to set up his teammates. You don't want to see these lazy, avoidable turnovers, but I'm not worried about them. It's preseason, he's getting used to NBA conditioning, etc, etc. I don't expect this to be an issue. Finally, we can't talk about DaVon Mitchell without breaking down his defense. The former Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year once again looked very good on this end of the floor. Quickly going back to his trio with Fox and Haliburton, Mitchell's defense is one of the reasons why I think they can all play together in spurts. Mitchell is a dog on D. He gets after every possession and treats attackers relentlessly. That means getting down in a stance, making second efforts, fighting over screens, and trying to contest every shot or action. Mitchell can slide sideways and backwards, or he can mirror what attackers are doing and stifle them. Watch here against Brandon Boston Jr. The only area where I see Mitchell having to really adjust in the NBA is off-ball awareness. Mitchell does not tend to ball watch or anything like that, but there can sometimes be a lot of things going on in the NBA game. Mitchell will have to make sure he remains dialed in and engaged to not lose sight of his defensive assignment. For as long as this channel has existed, you've heard me describe Jared Butler time and time again as a steal. After his preseason, I feel even stronger about that. Butler fell to the 40th pick in the draft, but that was largely due to health concerns, not any concerns over what he can bring on the floor. Coming out of Baylor, I was slightly concerned that Butler's lack of top-tier athleticism would hinder him more at the pro level than in college. So far, he's proved me wrong. Butler is still not an elite athlete, but he is solid enough, and most of all, he is really crafty. In preseason, Butler excelled at keeping his defenders on his toes with quick dribble moves, convincing hezzies, and sudden crossovers. Watch him here, for example, as he has Chris Middleton on an island and absolutely wrecks him. Butler is also a creative finisher. He can arc the ball high in the air to not get blocked, and he's also shown a nice in-between game which he puts to good use. You see that in this clip. Butler freezes the defense with the in and out and then pulls up into the soft teardrop. Another important thing for Butler is his strength. He's not the biggest or most explosive, but he's built really well. There are still times where Butler can struggle at the basket because of his average athleticism. At the end of the day, Butler is more reliant on craft than he is on physical tools. Against length or bigger defenders, he is not always able to generate an advantage and he can be forced into some tough angles. But overall, I thought Butler had a very solid preseason, where he addressed some of my concerns for now. With the Utah Jazz, Butler was also able to show off his expanded skill set. I had a feeling that this might happen when he left Baylor. Butler was a stud for the Bears, but he had to share creation duties with DaVon Mitchell a lot. Now that he's by himself on the Jazz, Butler is playing a lot more like a lead guard. So far, he's looked fully at ease and deserving of a rotation spot. Particularly, I've enjoyed Butler's willingness to create for himself off the dribble. We did not see this too much at the college level, but watch this nasty sequence here that ends with Butler drilling the step-back three. Of course though, Butler does have to keep getting better in this regard. It's nice to see the flashes, but they are also just flashes for now. he still needs to add consistency. In my opinion, that will come, but still. As of now, Butler made 33% of his threes in preseason while taking 6 a game. To be fair to him, I expect that volume to go down in the regular season, and he will likely not be given as big of a green light to explore his offensive game. Finally, Butler's expanded guard role also meant that he took on more creation responsibilities for the Jazz. I thought he did quite well in preseason, and the numbers back that up too. Butler averaged 4.3 assists to 2.7 turnovers in his first minutes of NBA action. That's definitely improvable, but I'm looking at it with the context of Butler being a rookie who could not play summer league ball. Watch here as Butler has Chris Middleton on an island again. He makes him dance with a quick crossover, attracts the help, and then dishes it off for the big dunk. Or here, it's great manipulation as Butler draws the switch, gets into the paint off the quick crossover, and then once Kristaps Porzingis steps up, he is quick to find the lob. In this clip, Butler again gets the screen, he goes left, keeps his defender on his back, and then hits the roller with the no-look pass. So there were a lot of names that I could have chosen from: Josh Primo, Josh Giddey, James Bouknight, a bunch of guys, Trey Murphy. They all had impressive preseasons for different reasons. At the end of the day, I went with DaVon Mitchell, Jared Butler, and Cam Thomas. 3 guys who I think could have important roles on their respective teams. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment, tell me what you think of rookies in the preseason, what you think of these 3 guys, and as always, if you enjoy the channel, if you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.